Baltimore and all in on Monday at the trading deadline. Luke will be out at Camden Yards all week long, but has been spending the mornings in Owings Mills where the injuries continue to mount up. Now Crockett Gilmore, we saw Saragusa the other day. But the big story, of course, is the Flacco injury and him coming back and perhaps Colin Kaepernick coming in. This guy has covered the 49ers since Walsh and Young and Montana. He's been there forever. And the NBC Sports for the Bay Area. He's also a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, so I'm going to yell at him about Art Modell before it's all over with. No, I'm not. I'm going to be nice. Matt Mayoko joins us here live via satellite from one of my favorite towns in San Francisco, where the Colin Kaepernick story is sort of rearview mirror out there, right, Matt?
Yeah, I think so. You know, around this time last year, he was a very big story and had been actually for, a while. It was a tumultuous offseason last year. He asked for a trade. The 49ers had talked to the Broncos mostly, and a deal was worked out, but then Kaepernick and the Broncos couldn't hammer out a new contract because they weren't going to pay him what he was scheduled to earn. And then, of course, the controversy with first sitting during the national anthem, the kneeling, which he smoothed over pretty quickly here with, a pledge to donate $1 million, and he's still going through with that, donating $100,000 every month for 10 months. I think he's on month 7 or 8 now. So I think everybody knew that he wouldn't be coming back to the 49ers, that he didn't fit Kyle Shanahan's system, that, anytime you've had a few bad seasons like the 49ers have had and you change the head coach and the general manager, you're not going to keep the same quarterback. So that was all part of the process. And I think everybody here kind of knew that it would be difficult for him to land a job quickly. And that's where we are now. And the only teams that have even stepped up and shown any interest have even really talked about him in terms of the possibility of adding him were Seattle and the Ravens. And Seattle brought in Austin Davis, I think, that very day that they talked to Kaepernick, and they ended up signing Austin Davis instead. And what's interesting to me is the reasoning that we hear. And you heard it from John Harbaugh, you heard it from Pete Carroll, at least with John Harbaugh initially, was that basically he's too good for the role that we envision him. John Harbaugh said, we need a camp arm, and Colin Kaepernick is not a camp arm. Pete Carroll said, well, he should be a starter. He shouldn't be a backup on our team. He should be a starter somewhere. So the fact of the matter is,
well, then you got two NFL coaches saying he's among the best 32 quarterbacks in the league to some degree. Now, whether that's lip service or not, look, man, I was at the thing Sunday night, right? Goodell is going to do this fan forum. It had been, in the works for weeks. I was over in Paris on Wednesday. I get a text that Flacco's back's no good. And next thing you know, the coach has to speak up for Kaepernick, which after all the Ray Rice stuff here, Matt, and, all the Ray Lewis stuff here, Bisciotti is in an era now, in the afterglow of a couple of championships where they don't really want any trouble around here. They don't want any problems. Bisciotti's already had to sit in front of the media several times and get grilled about Ray Rice after standing by him. It's a tough situation. And then they have this fan forum. And I know Jed York and, all the tumult you've had out there in the Bay Area, as well as the Raiders and what they've gone through. But the owner never wants to have to take the stage to do that sort of thing. And, man, Bisciotti's kind of dangerous because he's honest. And a fan, literally at a fan forum, sucked him onto the stage and, had him and the commissioner up there talking about Colin Kaepernick. I mean, that's a weird spot to be in, yet the 49ers came a play away. I wrote a book about the Ravens championship. My book, if he just hands the ball off to Frank Gore, I'm pretty convinced that Jim would have been the champion and not John. That's how close Kaepernick came to winning a title. I mean, it really is. It's been an incredible arc for his career from that moment of almost winning a championship to where he is right now, right?
Yeah, and, I've been around the NFL a long time, and this is the first time I've ever heard a team, or two teams in this case, talking about a player being too good to join their team.
Not a player, a quarterback, which is the holy grail, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think the whole idea behind putting together a roster is to get starter caliber players in backup positions, so that when the starter goes down or if the starter struggles, you move on to the next guy. So, I've never heard of that before, but you're hearing it with Colin Kaepernick, and I think a lot of people here they're kind of amazed of the comparison of Ray Rice, punching his fiance at the time, and the comparison of Colin Kaepernick speaking out and trying to make a difference when it comes to societal change. A lot of people are like, hold it, are you equating? Is the public talking about the same thing? One guy who hits a woman, and the other guy who's trying to exercising his First Amendment right and trying to bring attention to a part of our society that I don't think anyone is proud of, and who's also putting his money toward good causes that kind of feed into his message of helping maybe the underserved communities of the United States. So I think it's kind of difficult to come to grips with that comparison. And also, of course, obviously Ray Lewis and what he did.
He has a statue in front of the building, by the way. And, people in Baltimore, that's normal. That's cool. Everywhere else, that seems to be incredibly frowned upon.
Yeah, no question about it. So, I don't know. I do think that, and this gets into the blaming the victim a little bit. I mean, Colin Kaepernick could have taken steps this offseason to make himself become a more attractive hire for NFL teams. I mean, he, instead of sending word out through intermediaries that he was going to stand for the national anthem this season, why didn't he say it himself? Why didn't he put his name behind it and explain where he is?
Well, he's got an Instagram and a Twitter and a YouTube. He doesn't need you or I to do that either, right?
Right, but he didn't do it. He never stated, he's never put a video of himself up kind of saying this is my belief, this is where things are going, and this is why, if I'm in the NFL this season, I'm going to stand for the national anthem. I think NFL teams are also, I mean, let's face it, NFL teams want guys who think about football, who prepare for football, who study football, and really have no life outside of football. That's what NFL teams want, because this is a sport.
They want soldiers.
they want guys who are absolutely passionate about the game of football, and we've seen the last 2 or 3 years a lot more guys on the low side of 30, the guys who haven't even reached maybe even the primes of their careers, or at least guys who have plenty of years left, are walking away from the sport. So I think the time has never been more about NFL teams trying to identify guys who are all about football. And, all you have to do is follow Colin Kaepernick's Twitter account or his Instagram account and see that he has a lot more going on than just football. Now, clearly, guys can manage that. Guys can balance off the field and on the field. But I think NFL teams would like to feel more confident that Colin Kaepernick is 100% invested in football.
We are chatting with Matt Maiocco. I want to pronounce that right because I've seen it a billion times. He's a Hall of Fame voter. First time he's been on our program here in 25 years. We're glad to have him on talking all things Colin Kaepernick. He's covered the 49ers in the Bay Area at NBC for 23 years. You can follow his journey at Maiocco. That's MAIOCCO NBC. Out on Twitter as well. A lovely collection of press pads. It's a great idea. The press collage for your Twitter page is great, Matt. I just want to tell you that.
Thank you.
Well, go ahead.
I wish I'd kept them all through 23 years.
I have every one of them. Fun. I have a box, and it's a big box.
That's a good idea. I just think at some point, I think I did keep them. I always hold on to them, but then at some point, stashed it somewhere in the garage.
Storage.
Those are the first to go, when the garage cleaning comes up. But yeah, I always keep them through the season and then put a collage together, which is kind of fun to look at those and see the different press passes used around the league.
Yeah, there's a lot of color going on, a lot of logos going on around the NFL. And certainly, for Kaepernick here and the lightning rod it's been, and it's been very black and white, very left and right, very Trump and non-Trump and all of that stuff. We forget the football player. Like, okay, so what would possess Pete Carroll to say he's a starter but not my starter? And what would possess the Cleveland Browns to go in another direction, or the Houston Texans, or these other places? From on the field for him, passion aside, what you saw there from the beginning through the middle, through the end, when Harbaugh was in through Super Bowls, to the sort of crash and burn from Candlestick Park all the way down to Santa Clara, I mean, he's really been swirled up in a really bizarre situation there all the way around, from the owner to who's getting the ingredients, to who the coach is, to the power play with Harbaugh. I don't want to say he's been victimized, because certainly he made the choice to do the kneeling and the sitting and all that stuff and everything in the aftermath over the last 10 months. But it has been a bizarre situation for him, who was not a very heralded quarterback coming out of college, quite frankly. Nobody was ready to go all in on Colin Kaepernick before Jim Harbaugh was.
Yeah, and Jim Harbaugh loved Colin Kaepernick, and he didn't hesitate in the 2012 season when Alex Smith was playing the best football of his career. I think he had his last start, he had completed 18 of 19 passes, was player of the week in the NFC, first time and only time Alex Smith won that award. And then the next week, he sustains a concussion. Colin Kaepernick comes in, and that was the last we ever saw of Alex Smith playing for the 49ers in a meaningful situation.
Well, what did he see then? Maybe that's what, what was that glimmer then?
Yeah, the glimmer was that he had an extraordinary athlete and somebody who had an incredibly high ceiling, that, he was taking this young guy who, had a terrific arm, and added an element that had really not been seen, at least not to this level in the NFL, as far as a running element. Let's remember his first playoff game, he rushed for 180 yards. He rushed for 180 yards. Just think about that. And then the first game the next season, he threw for 300. So, Colin Kaepernick, and he threw for 300, I believe, in the Super Bowl too. But there will be teams this year, at least a handful of teams, that week one of the regular season, they'll be trotting a quarterback out there that's not as good as Colin Kaepernick. Now, is he a perfect quarterback? Of course not. He's not. I think he's too quick at times to break out of the pocket and try to make plays with his legs. I think he's maybe at times a little bit too reliant on his mobility and his speed, and he's a long strider, and he can get into a secondary and take it the distance.
Every mobile quarterback you could say that about, though, right? We say that about everybody who can run, that they like to run. Well, they're good at it, right?
Yeah, and I think but there are different kinds of running. A guy like Russell Wilson, he still keeps his eyes downfield, and he's moving around, going from side to side, maybe more of a Fran Tarkenton type, looking to deliver the ball down the field. So, there's that, but I mean, that's kind of nitpicking. When you look at the passing stats, he's right around the 60% mark. He takes care of the football. I think last year he had 16 touchdown passes and only 4 interceptions. So, he's not going to give the ball away. Maybe, sometimes he doesn't anticipate throws and throw a receiver open, be able to put the ball out there and let a receiver go get it. He likes to see a guy who's wide open and then just, drill the ball in there. But again, that's kind of nitpicking when you consider some of the other quarterbacks who are going to be starters this season, and kind of the elements of their play that leaves a lot to be desired as well. So I think any team, I mean, there are certainly some teams who will look and say, yeah, he doesn't fit our style. If our starter goes down, we don't want to have to overhaul our system to incorporate his skills. So, yeah, let's take a pass on him. But there are other teams that I think he would be a good fit for. And, whether the Ravens or one of those teams, certainly Greg Roman has some very strong ideas on how to use Colin Kaepernick and how not to use Colin Kaepernick. And I think probably if just about any coordinator out there could make that work, any offensive coach could make that work. I think Greg Roman would be a pretty good guy just because of his background with Colin and knowing what he was able to do, what kind of offense the 49ers had implemented when Colin was rolling, and then when Colin was not playing at a high level, why that occurred. So I think Colin Kaepernick does have to be coached hard, and Roman could probably handle that. But I don't know if Greg Roman would be someone who would go to bat for Colin. I don't know that. I don't know if after coaching him for 4 years with the 49ers, if that's something that he'd like to revisit or have more of a traditional type of quarterback on his team.
I would think, though, if Greg Roman did not like Kaepernick at this point, even if Jim Harbaugh did and John wouldn't know any better, I think if Greg Roman was against this, we never would have heard of this. You know what I mean? I think this thing would have been squelched, and Bisciotti and Harbaugh wouldn't be answering questions about it. They would just say, no, we're not interested. I mean, it was very, very easy for the other 31 teams, 30 teams, not Pete Carroll notwithstanding, to say we're not interested. It would have been easy for the Ravens to just say, no, we're not interested. We just need a camp arm. No problem. Move on. Instead of having guys like me in the middle of the week, a week later, talking about it, right? Because it is – a legitimate consideration. It was very, very obvious that they were leaning toward it and not away from it, because they would have dropped it like it was hot if they were running away from it. That being said, let me ask you, you've been around this a long time, and I really respect your background in football and your Hall of Fame credential, all the stuff. Would you have him on your football team? I mean, if the Ravens sign him, is that a good signing for the Ravens as a backup quarterback, Colin Kaepernick, right now?
I mean, when you look at, is he better than Ryan Mallett? Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay,
I'd much rather have Colin Kaepernick as my quarterback than Ryan Mallett or whomever. Who's the number 3 guy there now? I mean, I don't even know.
Arena League football guy named X who will be gone in a week. Yes.
Yeah. So if teams really are serious about it being a football decision. And trying to build the better team, the best team that they can have, then I don't see why he wouldn't be a fit there. But now we're talking about all the other stuff, and I gotta believe. I mean, I believe Colin Kaepernick has donated some money to a group in Baltimore too. I know he's donated money to for organizations in Wisconsin, Chicago, I believe Ohio. So, he can do a lot of good. And I think what he needs to do is to kind of explain himself a little bit more, because I think people just kind of read the headline. People just see, oh, he hates this country. He's kneeling for the national anthem. That's a sign of disrespect. Well, I mean, if you heard him say why and what needs to be changed, well, it makes a lot more sense. And in fact, when word first got out last year, a lot of his teammates didn't even know, with the 49ers, didn't even know that he was doing this. And news kind of broke, or the explanation came out. I think it was a day after the 49ers had their 3rd preseason game, I think it was. And the next day they had, the regular meetings, team meetings, to kind of deconstruct the game from the night before. A lot of his 49er teammates were not happy. They were kind of PO'd at the attention that this was receiving and why Kaepernick would do this.
Well, and also guys like you were coming up to their locker asking how they feel about it.
Well, this is all before this, though.
Right.
So anyway, so this team meeting, and some guys were not real happy, and the leaders on the team said, "Colin, do you want to say anything?" And he got up and he explained himself, and some of the players on the team who walked into that meeting not happy at all came out of it saying, "Okay, I get it." A lot of them said, "I don't agree with how he's expressing himself, but there's no question we all agree with the message." So the best that he can do for himself and his cause, I think, is to explain himself. And the whole, this is an anti-military. No, it's not anti-military. And he says, I love this country. That's why I'm doing this stuff. I want to see our country be better at areas where I think a lot of us can agree that it's probably, it could be a lot better. No question. So I think he's brought a tremendous amount of attention to the protest, but I think in some ways what gets lost is the message kind of gets overwhelmed by the act of kneeling for the national anthem. And like I said, his intermediaries have said he won't be kneeling this year; he'll be standing. But I just think that he needs to say that, and he needs to probably do a better job of taking advantage of the platform he has to explain himself and kind of bring people around to the thought that, what, I bet a lot more people would jump behind him and say, "Oh, okay, this is what that's all about." That's a pretty good message.
Matt Mayoko covers all things San Francisco 49ers, that lucky guy down in Santa Clara at NBC Sports Bay Area. You can follow him at Mayoko. That's Maicco NBCS out on Twitter. All right, two things for you, and we'll leave the Kaepernick thing with this. Goodell comes to town. He does the fan forum. Bisciotti has to get up and speak to it. Dick Cass had to speak to it. Then he comes and meets with the media, and there's about 8 or 9 of us. We cornered Goodell in the back of the press box, and I didn't have any sort of question in my arrow in my bag to shoot at the commissioner because I get one question, but my question certainly stung him and pushed him back a little bit. I said, this is a hell of a message for the other players in the league. There's 3,000 other guys that if they take a knee, if they decide to protest or dissent in any way, that they won't get a job next year. They'll be out of the league. That really is the message to the rest of these guys, that you may never work in the league again if you decide to speak up. I think that's a pretty dangerous thing, Matt, and I know you probably do too, having covered this for as long as you've had, and I don't think they want everybody taking a knee or being pissed off or about whatever would happen in Ferguson. Hey, man, I live in Baltimore. We had riots here. The baseball team had to answer to that, and their answer was, well, we'll just lock the doors and not let anybody in and play. We're going the wrong direction in a lot of ways, but certainly for the league that is a very colorful league, a very multicultural league in a lot of ways, that's not a good message to send to the workforce that, you're going to get the Curt Flood treatment if you decide to walk outside the little red, white, and blue shield in any way.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think there's a double standard here. Colin Kaepernick isn't the only person to protest or speak out, but yet he's the only one kind of being held up as an example.
Yeah, he didn't run afoul of the law. He ran afoul of public opinion, which is worse, obviously, right?
Yeah. And there were 2 other players on the 49ers who joined him, and 99% of the sporting public would have no idea that Eric Reed and Eli Harold joined him in kneeling for the national anthem, and other players didn't take a knee, but they raised a fist or made some other kind of gesture that in support of Colin Kaepernick. But yet, Colin Kaepernick has been the lightning rod for this, and he's the only person that people have talked about as far as getting behind this cause, and he's certainly the only player. I think there was a player with the with the Denver Broncos, who lost some local endorsements. But I mean, Colin Kaepernick has taken kind of the weight of this entire movement on his shoulder, and he's the person who's had the most to lose and has lost the most. But if he people always ask me, was that the right thing to do? He could have done. He didn't have to kneel. He didn't have to take that stance, such a polarizing stance. And what I think is that this wouldn't be getting the attention if he hadn't. So yes, it's kept him out of the NFL from March when he opted out of his contract to today, as training camps are getting into a week into camp. And any team that wants a quarterback, you probably better have gotten him sooner than later, because with the quarterback position, you want a guy who knows what he's doing, knows the system. So if a team wants Colin Kaepernick, such as the Ravens, they need to get him in there now so he can start learning and have a reasonable chance of winning a roster spot. So I don't know. There's so many variables to this, so many elements to the Colin Kaepernick saga, and why it's been him. It's been just the polarizing figure. Clearly, it's a controversial subject, a controversial way he went about protesting it. But I think the way he went about it made people uncomfortable. And what is a protest designed to do? Well, it's probably designed to make people uncomfortable, to make them kind of stop in their tracks and see what's going on, why this person's protesting, what the message is. Now I think what Colin Kaepernick has to do is continue delivering that message in a way that, no matter what your political affiliation is, no matter what color your skin is, no matter whether you live in the cities on the left coast and the East Coast, or if you live in rural America, you see what his message is, and you come to some understanding that what he's saying isn't all wrong. And if advances are made in Colin Kaepernick's cause, then it makes this country a better country.
Matt Maiocco joining us here. All right, so here's the least smooth transition of all time from Colin Kaepernick to what all Baltimoreans would be concerned with your little magic golden ticket. And I'm not going to beat you up on Art Modell. I'll save that for the second date. But Ray Lewis is going to be on the ballot in 6 months. You're going to have an opportunity to vote him in. We got a lot of purple buses already pointed toward Canton for next August. And during this tender week when we've got other candidates going in and getting their bronze busts, the Ray Lewis thing, is there going to be a real conversation about this in late January, or do you see it as he'll just be there?
I mean, I think that there will be a conversation. I'm sure that someone will bring up some off the field stuff, but I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be I think the last 2 years, the Terrell Owens conversation has stretched longer than any other conversation. Maybe this year it was Tagliabue, but I don't see it being a real heated debate, and I don't see it being a real narrow vote. I mean, one of the things that in the Pro Football Hall of Fame bylaws, it says that you only consider a player's achievements and accomplishments on the field. And if you take that at its word, and we've seen players in the past with certainly questionable off the field stuff get in. I mean, this isn't a Hall of Fame for angels. It's a Hall of Fame for football players, and I think that's when you look at this upcoming class, I would think that Ray Lewis would be pretty darn close to a sure thing.
Look, I could talk Niners and Lynch and all that stuff with you and CTE. We'll save that for another date. I've really enjoyed the visit. I really appreciate you making a little time and sort of clarifying some things for our audience here in Baltimore. And, in my efforts to sort of paint whatever picture of Colin Kaepernick that should be painted coming out of the Bay Area, because certainly there's been a lot of pictures painted around here the last 72 hours, as you can well imagine, right?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to hooking up down the road as well.
I owe you a beer somewhere up the line. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Matt Mayoko joining us here from NBC Sports in the Bay Area. He has covered the San Francisco 49ers for 23 years. He's also their Pro Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee member from the Bay Area. Great to have him on. Mayoko NBCS if you want to follow him. Tens of thousands, almost 100,000 do. MAIOCCO NBCS is the way to find him and his awesome media credentials out there on Twitter. You can find me in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day, from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Our morning newspaper reaches you via email, digitally, and free of charge, and powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. There's one right around the corner from you. If there is breaking news on Kaepernick, on the Orioles, on the Ravens, anything happening out there, and God knows every time the damn thing goes off, it's an injury from Owings Mills, Luke is on that scene, and it's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colossus will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV, the Sunday Sports Voice, now heard on Thursdays from 3 until 5 right here at WNST. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.